Welcome to Ancient Worlds, where every forgotten ruin tells a story, and every unearthed artifact holds a whisper from a deep, systemic failure. Today, you travel not to the great earthen capital of Cahokia, but much deeper into the past to the sweltering lowlands of Louisiana, near the confluence of the Mississippi and the Bayou Macon. You stand in the shadow of Poverty Point, a site dating back nearly 3,400 years, older than the pyramids of Egypt, and a monumental anomaly in early North American history. Ever wonder what it truly felt like to stand in the shadow of a living civilization built entirely on fragile complexity? You are about to enter one of the most enduring mysteries of the archaeological world, not centered on a massive temple, but on a collection of tiny, enigmatic objects made of baked clay. The core anomaly of Poverty Point, and the subject of the Forbidden Archives, is the massive effort expended on monumental architecture alongside evidence of what appears to be a society still primarily consisting of hunter-gatherers. This thesis challenges our neat historical timelines. The monumental scale is undeniable. 6 vast, concentric earthen ridges, nearly a mile across, forming a colossal semicircle around a central plaza. Yet, these people left behind no pottery, no sophisticated weaponry, and no evidence of large-scale agriculture. This is the complexity mandate in reverse. Immense public works with an apparent social simplicity. However, scattered across this colossal site are millions of tiny, unassuming, thumb-sized objects. They are simple, baked clay lumps, known clinically as baked clay objects, BCOs, and they are the heart of our investigation. They come in dozens of highly standardized shapes: spheres, bicones, deeply grooved cylinders, and tiny approximations of sweet potatoes. The number is staggering. Millions of them have been recovered. They are seemingly insignificant, yet their abundance, uniformity, and enigmatic function are the key to unlocking Poverty Point's unique political economy. The central mystery we must confront is whether these tiny clay lumps represent simple cooking technology, or if they were, in fact, a proto-writing or accounting system, a primitive script used to manage the labor, resources, and vast trade network that allowed Poverty Point to exist. If these tiny clay balls were the civilization's script, their collapse means an entire archive vanished, leaving only a whisper of clay behind. We begin by first examining the true apex of the Poverty Point civilization, the architecture that required this massive administrative effort. As you leave the perimeter of the vast, unassuming earthen ridges, you realize that the magnitude of Poverty Point is not in its height, but in its horizontal scale. You stand at the center of the monumental landscape, and the true marvel of the Apex system becomes clear. 6 colossal, concentric, semi-elliptical earthen ridges, arranged around a perfectly flat central plaza over 37 acres wide. This geometric precision, engineered with simple stone and earth tools, suggests a level of coordinated labor and administrative planning previously unseen among hunter-gatherer societies in North America. This architectural feat, which required moving millions of cubic feet of earth, embodies the civilization's political core. The concentric rings likely served as platforms for hundreds of dwellings, organizing the community into distinct social or residential sectors. This arrangement was critical. It showed the world a singular, unified identity, essential for maintaining control over the vast trade network that funneled exotic materials like jasper, quartz, and magnetite from hundreds of miles away to this one isolated site in Louisiana. The crown jewel of Poverty Point's engineering is Mound A, often called the Bird Mound. You shift your gaze north and see this massive, flat-topped structure rising steeply from the outer ridges. Originally, it was shaped like a stylized, soaring bird or falcon, spanning over 700 feet across. This mound was built in a single, rapid, intensely coordinated effort, likely over a period of mere weeks. The sheer political mobilization required to pull thousands of people away from subsistence activities and focus them on one project with such speed speaks to an unquestionable, centralized authority. This authority was based on spectacle and ritual, precisely the kind of centralized power that defines the initial peak of Tainter's complexity model. The Mound A structure, aligned to the east, served as the ultimate ceremonial stage, linking the political elite to cosmological order. It reinforced the belief that the system, though demanding massive labor, was divinely sanctioned and provided stability. You see the profound contradiction. The complex, centralized power needed to build these monuments far exceeded what was needed for simple hunting and fishing. This political surplus, built on a highly successful but fragile trade economy, is what allowed the elite to command the massive labor required. The monumentality of the site was the system's primary tool for convincing its thousands of residents and trade partners that the political structure was eternal. But to sustain this immense, specialized complexity without the backbone of full-scale agriculture, Poverty Point needed a secondary, equally complex system, an administrative technology small enough to carry, yet powerful enough to manage the flow of goods. This is where the tiny clay lumps return to our investigation. The immediate, most accepted explanation for the baked clay objects, BCOs, is rooted in practicality, the cooking stone theory. You leave the grand geometry of the rings and focus now on the millions of these small, thumb-sized clay lumps scattered across the central plaza and surrounding middens, ancient trash heaps. Why were these people baking millions of clay pieces when they already had the colossal resources to move mountains? The answer lies in the scarcity of a far simpler resource: stone. Poverty Point is located in an alluvial floodplain, a swampy environment where natural river stone suitable for cooking is virtually non-existent. For thousands of years, North American hunter-gatherers utilized stone boiling or earth ovens. They heated fist-sized river stones in a fire until they were scorching hot, then dropped them into woven baskets or pits filled with water and food to slowly cook or steam the contents. Since Poverty Point lacked local stone, the ingenious builders utilized the abundant material they did have, the local clay. They shaped the clay into standardized forms: spheres, grooved cylinders, approximations of potatoes and nuts, and baked them hard in fires. These BCOs were portable, heat-retentive substitutes for cooking stones. When a BCO cracked after repeated use, it was simply discarded, explaining the massive quantities found in the middens. This theory is compelling because it provides a clear technological solution to a defined environmental problem, suggesting that the standardization was driven by thermal efficiency. However, the sheer uniformity of the BCOs immediately raises the suspicions of the archivist. You hold a few of these reconstructed objects in your hand. They are not merely crude lumps. They are manufactured with a surprising degree of precision. Some shapes, like the melon-grooved objects, appear in consistent sizes over vast areas of the site. If the sole purpose was thermal mass for cooking, why the extraordinary number of standardized, elaborate shapes? Why not simply stick to featureless clay balls? This extreme standardization hints at a function that transcends mere kitchen utility. It suggests the BCOs might have carried meaning, that the shape itself represented information or a commodity. This possibility is what moves the BCOs from the domain of kitchen archaeology into the deep, mysterious waters of the forbidden archives. The clay balls may have been heating elements, but their consistent design hints that they were simultaneously something far more complex: the administrative technology of the first great logistical system in the region. The uniformity and sheer quantity of the BCOs compel us to look beyond the cooking stone theory and into the fascinating realm of the notation hypothesis. This introduces the core scholarly conflict. Did Poverty Point invent a form of proto-writing or accounting using these baked clay lumps? You recall that Poverty Point was built on a vast trade network. They imported tons of materials such as slate, quartz, and magnetite from the distant Appalachian and Ozark Mountains. This immense flow of goods required complex logistics, controlling who brought what, how much was consumed, and how tribute was paid. Without pottery or a known written language, how did the elite manage and record these transactions? The notation hypothesis posits that the highly standardized BCO shapes served as a tangible, three-dimensional accounting system. Each specific shape, the smooth sphere, the deep-grooved cylinder, the flat disc, might not have represented a sound or a word, but rather a unit of commodity or a unit of labor. For instance, one sphere shape could represent one basket of nuts, while a bicone could represent one day of labor on Mound A, or a specific amount of imported jasper. This theory gains weight when examined alongside other ancient, pre-literate civilizations. The earliest known examples of administrative systems, like the clay tokens used in Mesopotamia over 5,000 years ago, served precisely this function. They were tokens representing units of sheep, grain, or oil. The Poverty Point BCOs share this essential trait of standardized, discrete, and abundant tokens. They are, in effect, a forbidden archive of economic data, undecipherable not because the script is complex, but because we lack the Rosetta Stone defining the value of each shape. The sheer numbers support this idea. If you need millions of BCOs just for cooking, why not create simple, efficient shapes? The wide variety suggests different functions. Furthermore, some archaeologists have noted that certain BCO shapes are found concentrated in specific areas of the rings, suggesting they might relate to segregated social units or specialized trade accounts tied to those residential sectors. If the notation hypothesis is correct, the elite's control was not just based on the spectacle of Mound A, but on an administrative technology, the BCO system, that allowed them to track the rising cost of complexity. This subtle layer of bureaucracy was essential to running an operation of this magnitude without agriculture. When the system eventually failed, it wasn't just the cooking method that disappeared. It was the entire economic ledger that vanished, leaving behind only the mysterious clay fragments. If the BCOs truly functioned as a critical administrative tool, then their fate is directly linked to the collapse of Poverty Point's immense Apex system. Our investigation now focuses on the archaeological data that documents the exodus of the system. The evidence that the BCO production and complexity failed before the entire site was abandoned. Poverty Point was fully utilized for several hundred years, roughly between 1,700 BCE and 1,100 BCE. During this period, BCO production was constant, massive, and highly varied in shape, suggesting a high degree of economic and social activity. However, archaeologists have observed a critical divergence in the archaeological layers. The evidence suggests that the elaborate BCO manufacturing system collapsed well before the site was fully vacated. You look at the stratigraphic layers. In the earlier, peak layers, you find the full range of complex BCO shapes, grooved, biconical, etc. As you move up to the layers immediately preceding the final abandonment, the variety shrinks dramatically, and the remaining BCOs are predominantly crude, simple spheres or cylinders. This simplification is a telltale sign that the system was losing its intellectual and organizational capital. The complex notation, or accounting system, if it existed, broke down into its simplest, most basic function, cooking, using generic shapes. This decline in BCO standardization aligns perfectly with internal fault lines. The elite at Poverty Point controlled the flow of specialized knowledge, astronomy, mound building logistics, and the flow of exotic trade goods. If the notation system was tied to the management of these complex resources, the loss of administrative control would immediately show up in the archaeological record as a loss of standardization. The workers, no longer managed by a rigid accounting system, reverted to manufacturing simple heating elements. The site itself wasn't destroyed by invasion or fire. Instead, the evidence points to a massive decentralization. The people performing the labor and maintaining the system simply stopped coming to the site. This suggests that the cost of participation, the labor required to maintain the mounds and supply the elite with trade goods, began to exceed the diminishing returns offered by the central system. The failure of the BCO system, the critical administrative technology, precedes and predicts the eventual physical abandonment of the colossal rings. Poverty Point did not die a sudden death. Its bureaucracy withered away, leaving the monumental earthworks as a testament to a system that became too burdensome for its own maintenance. The eventual failure of Poverty Point forces us to analyze the BCOs as the critical evidence strategy, the smoking gun that reveals the system's fatal flaw. You stand in the central plaza where millions of these clay fragments were discarded, and you ask, why did a civilization capable of building Mound A, the largest earthwork of its time, ultimately falter? The answer lies in the unique political complexity Poverty Point tried to achieve. Unlike Cahokia, which later relied on intensive agriculture to sustain its population, Poverty Point was based on aggregation, drawing dispersed groups of hunter-gatherers together seasonally to participate in trade and monumental construction. The entire system was financed by specialized exotic trade, like quartz and jasper, and validated by ritual spectacle, Mound A. For this model to work, the elite needed two things: massive labor during specific periods for construction, and a reliable, low-cost method of administering the trade and labor contributions of dozens of autonomous groups. If the BCOs were indeed a notation system, they were the non-linguistic communication necessary to manage this complexity. They served as receipts, invoices, or units of labor contribution, a crucial piece of administrative scaffolding holding the non-agricultural economy together. The forbidden archive debate here is critical. The simplified view, cooking stones, masks the true structural vulnerability. If the BCO system represented the economic ledger, its failure around 1100 BCE, the loss of standardization and the reversion to crude shapes, signifies the precise moment the elite lost the intellectual and administrative capacity to manage the complexity of their unique political economy. They could no longer keep their books straight. The collapse, therefore, was not a material one. It was an administrative and logistical failure. When the bookkeeping system broke, the elite could no longer justify the immense, voluntary labor required to maintain the rings and build the mounds. The diminishing returns set in rapidly because the cost of organizing the seasonal population exceeded the perceived benefit of the central site. The simple, crucial clay bones were the first things to break, signaling that the entire complex social contract, which was never rooted in a permanent food source, but in coordinated trade, was dissolving. The silent abandonment of Poverty Point offers a chilling case study in the legacy and warning of specialized, non-agricultural complexity. Unlike the violent fragmentation of Cahokia, the decline of Poverty Point was a quiet, systemic withdrawal, a dissolution of the massive human aggregation the site demanded. You walk away from the colossal, abandoned rings. The vast earthworks remain, enduring testament to the monumental political will that existed here between 1,700 and 1,100 BCE. But the people are gone, and the entire logistical system vanished with them. This collapse forces us to ask, what happens when the foundation of your society is not food, but information and coordination? The evidence suggests that the civilization's exogenous shock was likely tied to the subtle shifting of the river channels, like the Mississippi or the Bayou Macon, which may have disrupted the trade routes essential for financing the central site. But the ultimate trigger was the internal fault line, the failure of the BCO system. When the simple, ubiquitous clay lumps, the administrative technology of the elite, lost their standardization and failed to manage the incoming flow of exotic materials, the cost of coordinating the massive, seasonal population became prohibitive. Poverty Point warns us that the earliest forms of complexity are the most fragile. The people who built the massive bird mound and the concentric rings demonstrated an astonishing capacity for organization, but their system lacked the resilience and redundancy of a fully diversified economy. When the bookkeeping failed and the trade links frayed, there was no agricultural cushion to fall back on. This silent collapse carries a profound message for our own time. It shows how dependent even the grandest systems are on the lowest tech, simplest forms of information management. If the subtle notation system used by the elite breaks down, the entire monumental society can crumble. Look closely at the clay fragments. They are not just ancient cooking remnants, but the shattered pieces of the first North American administrative archive.